Hi, my name is Derek with Xotic Customs. We're here with Tab Performance's 2017 Road Glide. We're going to be installing our Taildragger rear air suspension kit with remote and fast up air tank, and we're going to also be using our brand new upgraded shocks. Alright, we're going to mount our toggle switch under here. What we've done is taken the spark plug wire clip out of the frame. If you notice, there is a hole above it that's already open, but that won't work for the switch because the back of the switch is too deep and it'll hit the back plate, shorting it out. So what we've done is remove this, and now we will drill out this hole to make it a little bit bigger in order for the switch to fit in there. Alright, now we've got our switch, and we usually put a little bit of blue Loctite on there just to make sure nothing comes loose. You're going to adjust your ring a little bit. When you mount the switch, it doesn't really matter which way is up, which way is down. We always do it just for consistency. We put the white wire on the bottom, so that way it will be your up with a tank or your compressor without a tank. Think of it as a teeter-totter. When you push up on the switch, it activates the bottom wire. Down on the switch activates the top wire. Middle red wire is your positive, or your from the battery. There we go, that's better. There we go, that's better. On 2014 and newer, this is the most common place to mount it. Otherwise, if you have the plastic heat shields that sit here, we like to mount it in the top of that heat shield. This way it's pretty well hidden. There's no room on 2014 and newer in the dash and the switches anymore. 13 and older, if you have open switch blanks in the dash, you can mount this switch in there. Now we also just run a zip tie around these spark plug wires just to make sure it doesn't flop around, getting crimped together. And then you want to take the power wire out of the loom, because it's going to stay over here where the other two wires for your up and down are going to go to the other side. So you want to leave those together so they run a little neater. Alright, now we got the wires separated. Also, a note, we usually have heat shrink, about 18 inches of heat shrink for those applications where you put the switch in the dash. That way where it runs along the frame, it looks like factory wiring. In this case, since we're going so short and we're separating the wires so early, we just got rid of the heat shrink. We just cut it off of there. So now we run our wires underneath, so that way when you pull the seat off, you don't see any of our stuff. Alright, this is our on-off switch. It's just a on-off toggle switch. It's our master kill. So that way with your air tank, if you don't have an air tank, you don't use this switch. It's not included, doesn't do anything. With an air tank, this will kill power to the pressure switch that turns the compressor on. So if you're not around your bike for an extended period of time, just hit the kill switch. It'll shut everything off, so that way the compressor can't run and kill your battery. Turn it on, the pressure switch will run the compressor like normal. So we're going to mount it right up here. There's a factory hole here on the 14 and newer. 08 and older, we still mount it in this plate, in the frame plate somewhere. Just drill your own hole. So this doesn't need to be accessed all the time, just if you're going to leave your bike sit for more than a day or a couple days or something like that. We're going to drill this out to a 1/2 inch hole for the switch to mount. Just a little bit. Alright, on the 14 and newer Harleys, they have this bracket here, which, if you notice these two drilled and tapped bungs, that is for European emissions. There's also a couple plugs that are snapped into here. We just unsnap them, move them down out of the way. We move our wiring harness, our main wiring harness, back into the channel of the frame back here. Just kind of push it back in there. This is where we're going to mount our compressor. We always cut these off. No harm, no foul. unless you're in Europe, then it's a different story. But alright, we got the compressor mounted in here. I just took some rubbers, put it on both ends just to make sure it doesn't vibrate too loud on the frame. Now we'll just take a couple zip ties. Here's your factory zip tie. So we'll just do another one right about the same spot. We'll do another one lower down here, and it'll be secured. Also on the 2013 and older, there's some gussets underneath the ABS tray that we cut off, and another set of 2 bungs underneath there. That's also for European emissions. So same thing we did with here, we just cut those off, cut them off completely flush. This compressor, you take it out of the bracket that it comes with, and it'll go horizontally underneath the ABS tray in 2013 to 09. 2008 and older, we like to mount them underneath the battery tray. You turn it horizontally, use the mounting bracket that comes with the compressor, or if the bike does not have cruise control, you can mount it underneath the left side cover where the cruise control module would be up against the battery box. Alright, we're going to put the zip tie on here. Be sure when you're doing this that you do not pinch your factory wiring harness between the zip tie and the compressor. Alright, we're going to mount our dump valve. It's going to mount right here to the side of the ABS block. We're just going to use a little bit of 2-sided tape. Make sure to mount it so the fitting's pointing outwards. This is your filter. It's basically a muffler. It quiets it down, keeps all the debris out of the valve. So that's where the air comes out of when you dump the system. And also with the dump valve, you've got 2 black wires. It doesn't matter which one's positive, which one's negative. Just designate one for one and one for the other. Mount our fill valve. We're going to mount it underneath this, which we've also had some connectors that were clipped to this. So I've simply just disconnected them, moved them down out of the way. We're going to have to cut off this gusset here, and then also underneath these 2 tabs, we'll cut both those off. We'll mount our fill valve right there. Also these tabs. We'll take our fill valve, which is directional. You've got the arrows showing you on the bottom. There's an inlet and then an outlet. So we take a little bit of 2-sided tape, and then we'll also take a zip tie. The 2-sided tape just helps keep it from sliding around. The zip tie will keep it up nice and tight to there. Okay, ready?
Yep, go ahead.
And make sure the fill valve is flush with the end of this tab. And the reason we cut these gussets off is because if you didn't, that zip tie would just keep sliding out to the end. And we'll do 2 on there. This is our 2014 and newer patent pending square air tank. It's got your built-in pressure switch. You've got a shut-off switch, a manual valve. So you can reach between the saddlebag and the fender, shut your air off. That way if the valve ever fails, the bike won't lift up on its own. Great for center stands. Tank's made out of 1/4 inch thick aluminum, and we had it pressure tested, or hydro tested, and it failed at 700 psi. It began to flex at 650 psi. The compressor we use is only capable of 185 psi, so it's well beyond the limits of the compressor. Now this is the same shape on 2014 and newer and 2008 and older. It holds 40 ounces of air. The 09-13 has a little bit different shape. It's a little bit smaller just because of where it mounts. You've got your saddlebag rail that comes down. This clamp goes right over top of it, and it's adjustable so it can clamp down tight on it. And this uses the factory saddlebag rail bolt in the top. So on this one, to install this one, we're gonna drill these out to a 5/16 hole. Just ream them out. They're almost there. They're just the metric equivalent. Now with the way this is designed, a regular washer won't fit in here, so we just run a lock washer on the front side of it. To make it easier to get back here to put the hardware on, you can also pull these shields off, or just pull them loose. They don't need to come off. I got 3 1/4 inch nuts back there. That just gives you a little more room to get your hand behind there. Install the hardware. We have washer, lock washer, and then also a lock nut. We want to make double sure there's no chance of this coming loose. Alright, we'll take the shock off here, give you a better look. Notice the gap between the tank and the exhaust, and then you have plenty of clearance between the tank and the rotor, both top and bottom. So, and it is as solid as it gets. So unless this frame bends, that gap won't change. Also, we have a shorter model. We call it the V model. It's for Vance and Hines pipes with the side mount bracket. So make sure if you already have those Vance and Hines pipes, you let us know for the V model. That way it's a shorter one and it'll clear that tab. In order to clear the side cover, we need to remove these 2 tabs just to Now your remote box will mount right there. We'll also cut a little bit of a hole back here for all the wiring to go through into the battery tray area. Now we've got a good access point without kinking or bending any wires. Go ahead and connect your wiring harness and then run your wires through the hole. Stick it down and you're done. Alright, we've got to get our wires from our remote over to the other side. The yellow and the blue are going to be your dump valve and your fill valve wires. The red and the brown are going to be your positive. Those are going to go to the positive connection on the battery through the fusible link provided in the kit. And then the negative is just going to go to the ground on the battery. So we're going to run these over there, twist them together. We're going to run them underneath all the other wires, just like we did with the switch wires. Alright, now we're going to connect the wiring. Like I said, on your dump valve, one is positive, one is negative, doesn't matter which one. So we'll just get the negative up out of the way for right now. And the dump valve, remember on the switch, we put the blue wire on top, which actually when you push down on it, it will activate the top wire. So blue goes to your dump positive. And we've also got our two remote wires here. The yellow on the remote wire is going to the dump valve. So this way, if you push the switch, it throws power through this wire to the dump valve. If you push the button on the remote, it throws power through this to the dump valve. So we solder everything together. There are butt connectors included in the kit, just so you have it if you want it, but we recommend soldering just to make sure you have a perfect connection. Okay, dump valve is done. Now we're going to do the fill valve. So you're going to take your positive from your fill valve and your blue from your remote. And since they're both smaller wires, I like to put those two together. And then your white from your switch. And we're going to solder all three of those together. We'll run these grounds up into the battery tray area. Now we are going to connect the positive for the compressor to a piece of red wire. That red wire is going to go back to the pressure switch. So that way the pressure switch can communicate with the compressor, tell it when to kick on and when to kick off. Alright, now we're going to run that wire we just soldered together up alongside the fender. There's a fender mount bolt right up here. Make sure you run your wire and air lines on top of that bolt so that way they don't fall down and have any chance of getting into that tire. See, I'm pulling down on it, it's hitting that bolt there so it can't come down. Now we'll solder it to one of these two wires for the pressure switch. Doesn't matter which one. We're going to take a piece of red wire. You might ask, we're using red on everything. Well, it's all positive. Doesn't go to anything particular. Doesn't matter if they cross, whatever. That's why we're using red. It's all positive from the battery. So it's just a matter of a series of shutoffs for the positive flow to the compressor. You get the kill switch to interrupt it first, then you got the pressure switch to interrupt it, and then you got the compressor. So, but we'll take this red wire, solder it on the other end, and then we'll run it all the way up to the kill switch. Okay, we've got all of our grounds here for the system, for the remote and the system. So what we're going to do is we'll just put those all on one terminal. and then connect it to the negative on the battery. Make sure we have a perfect ground. Okay, and that'll just go on the negative on the battery. Alright, now we're going to take your two wires here from the kill switch. Doesn't matter which one, again, just take one of them and connect it to the red wire that we ran from the pressure switch in the back. Alright, now we've got our fusible link that's provided in the kit. Actually, in our instructions we have two fusible links when you get the instructions for the tank kit also. But if you're doing it all at once, I just put it all on one link and it'll be fine. So what you want to do first is pull the fuse out. That way while you're connecting it, the other end can't short out on anything. Now we're going to take the battery cables off. Before you do that, you need to make sure to turn the bike on, so that way the alarm won't go off if you break connection on the battery. We always try not to break the connection, but never not happens. Now we just broke connection on the battery, so if that was to happen and you didn't have the bike turned on and you have the audible alarm, it would be screaming at you right now. And while we got the bike on, we'll go ahead and just do our negatives also. Alright, now we're going to connect all of the positives to the fusible link. You've got your fusible link, you've got your switch positive, you got your two remote positives, and your kill switch positive. So now we'll just couple all those together. Now we can put the fuse back in. Now all the wires are connected and buttoned up. And then just run all your wiring down out of the way. Get it tucked away nice and neat. Okay, now on the remote, you're going to plug in your remote wire, or your antenna wire. And they give you a lot of cable. I don't know why. We'll just end up leaving it right under here. Remove the two-sided tape. Doesn't matter if the remote's covered up or the antenna's covered up, it'll still get plenty of signal. So, and then your remote is done. If your remote ever stops working, first thing you want to look at is these three wires on these connectors. And make sure one of those, they're really small wires, just make sure one of them's not broken. Go up under here, you're going to be coming into the ABS area. So same thing, run above that fender mount bolt so it keeps the airline out of the way of the tire. Run an airline to your tank. Make sure when you connect these, you push it all the way in and then pull back as hard as you can to lock it into place. Okay, we're going to run from the air tank over to our inlet on our fill valve. Now we're going to take a T-fitting and put it and add it here and run an airline into our compressor. Okay, and now we'll run the other side of this over the compressor. So basically what you're doing is the compressor, the dump valve, and the tank, or the fill valve, excuse me, the compressor, the fill valve, and the tank are all one side of the system. That side is going to hold 145 to 175 psi at all times. Keep that there. This fill valve is the gateway to the shock side of the system. So run our airline from the T over to the compressor. Make sure that you don't kink any of the lines or put a really hard bend on them. You're going to have some bend, but make sure it's as soft as possible going into the fittings. Alright, these are our new upgraded shocks. We call them an X model. They don't look any different than the Monroes, but they are. These only have 4 inches of travel instead of 5. They go down to the same height, 9¼ inches, but they only go up to 13 inches instead of the 14 inches of the Monroes. And what this does is it makes sure that this axle nut stays off of the exhaust, and in the older models it makes sure that this lower mount bolt stays off of the exhaust. So there's a chance with the Monroes that one of these 2 lower bolts will hit the exhaust fully extended. With these upgraded shocks, there's no chance of that. Also, the internal bag clamp on these have been strengthened with more pressure points. Also the upper cap, they have capped off the shock inside so that there's no air comes up to this top cap area, so there's no chance of it leaking. Now on the top mount of the shock, you put your bolt in with your washer, your lock washer, and then your bolt. And then you put a washer on the inside. That way this rubber bushing does not mushroom over this stud, preventing a removable backrest from being put on. Also, the fitting on these shocks has been moved to just straight forward instead of angled in, so there is no more right and left shock. They're all universal. Alright, now we're going to run our airline for our shock. Same thing, up and over the fender mount bolt. Into our push to connect fitting. Okay, and this is where we're going to put our 4-way push to connect fitting that's going to connect the other shock, fill valve, and dump valve. You don't want to run the shock or the airline underneath this bracket back here, because that fender doesn't go down very far, and if you're riding with it all the way low, there's a chance that this airline will fall down beyond the fender, contact the tire, and rub a hole through it. So we usually just go across underneath these tabs. Connect the other shock to the 4-way. Alright, now we'll run one airline from the 4-way to the dump valve. Push in, pull back to lock it. And we'll run the final one from the fill valve to the 4-way. Now we've got all the plumbing and all the wiring done, so now we'll go back in and zip tie all the wires, all the airlines, get everything nice and cleaned up and secured. A note, if you do not hook up your inlet properly, if you have your fill valve turned around, as the tank is airing up, the shocks will start airing up by themselves because the valve can't hold pressure going the other way. So like I said before, make sure that's inlet and outlet going the right directions. Tank is full, so now we just reach over and pop the switch. It'll automatically fill back up. Okay, we talked about the manual valve also. So now say you've got your saddlebag lid open, you reach down in here, flip that sideways. Now when you try to activate the switch to go up, you can hear the solenoid clicking, but no air is getting through. So even if the solenoid fails and your tank is full of air, as long as that's shut off, there's no air getting through, the bike will not lift up. Now we open that up. I'm going to drop the jack down a little bit now. Now we can air it up. Alright, now notice with our new upgraded shocks with only 4 inches of travel, that nut is not hitting the exhaust. It's close, but it's not hitting. Now with the Monroe shocks, with the 5-inch normal Monroes, that would be hitting the exhaust right now, and your exhaust would be pressing up against your axle nut. So that's the biggest advantage to these shocks there is. Also noticed that we come up in about 2 seconds. We're running the 5/32 inch airline. So we've also got 1/4 inch airline available. It only increases your speed by the speed by just a little bit, but the lines are much thicker and harder to run. So give a little demo on how fast it comes up now. Alright, now that we're done with the install, we want to raise the bike all the way up, fill the system full of pressure, and you want to check every single fitting connection using a glass cleaner, like a Windex. Do not use soapy water. Soapy water is too heavy and it won't show you a small leak. So there. And you'll notice a leak by bubbles growing. Now you might see bubbles on there when you first spray it, but you'll have a leak if they start actually expanding. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, testing our remote.